I guess we have everyone on. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sarah Barger. I'm a adjunct professor at, and this is part of the Visiting Filmmakers series curated by Associate Program Director. And the Filmmakers series has brought artists to the Mason campus for 20 years. And in light of recent events, we have gone online for the rest of the semester. So thank you for joining us. Just a couple housekeeping notes. Make sure to keep your microphone muted. If you have a question, you can either type it into the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen, or there's also a raise hand function. If you hover next to your name, there's 3 little icons that will pop up. One of them being, looks like Andrew, do you mind muting everyone who doesn't have this? Today we have 3 local production professionals joining us. I dubbed this Union Day, even though they're not all technically part of unions. We have Katy Garrity, who's with the Producers Guild of America. We have Ryan Hastings, who is with SAG-AFTRA, which is the Actors Guild, and David O'Farrell, who's with IATSE Local 487, which is the labor union representing the technicians and craftspeople and artisans in the entertainment industry. So basically everyone who makes it work who's not on screen and isn't a producer or writer or director. But I'll let David get into what IATSE does. We are also supposed to have Professor Monica Belays with us as well. She is another professor at Mason and is a member of the Writers Guild as well as the PGA and SAG-AFTRA, but unfortunately she couldn't make it today. And I do have to mention that the Visiting Filmmakers series online is sponsored by the Film and Video Studies, CHSS, CBPA, the English Department, the School of Art, Global Affairs and Global Programs, DVPA's Critico series, Arts in Context, University Libraries, Film and Media Studies, the Interdisciplinary Curriculum Committee, History and Art History, University of Life, and Women and Gender Studies. So a lot of departments have pulled together to make this happen. So we thank all of them for doing that. So I'm just gonna get started off and I'm gonna let Katy, Ryan, and David kind of explain what they do. So Katy, if we wanna start with you, you can talk about your organization, what they do, what they bring to the table, and why you got involved with them.
Yeah, sure. I am chair of the Producers Guild in DC, but we are a national organization that represents producers. We represent everybody from on the producers track, from production coordinators up through executive producers. So both above and below the line producers. We are not a union, to kick that off. We are a trade organization, we're a professional organization. We exist to sort of maintain professional standards within our industry, but we have no sort of power. We are not a lobbyist organization in the same way that IA and SAG can act. We have a little bit of different limitations. However, we invest very, very heavily in the education of our members, and we work in credit arbitration and to maintain the professionalism of producers. We sort of take a hard stand against the sale of credit. So paying money to fund a film just so you can get a producer credit, that sort of thing. You have to earn the producer's credit. When you join, I would say typically you've produced something like 13 hours. There's different rules depending on whether you did like new media content versus feature films. Those have different barriers to entry, but we will vet all of the credits and make sure that people actually did the work of producing. We love it because once you're in, I would say we are an extraordinarily generous organization. We're very, very strong community here in DC. For me, I joined because I was at National Geographic for a number of years. And I was in a place where I was sort of transitioning between associate producer and moving up to producer, and I needed more mentorship. So I was looking for an organization to really tell me what being a producer could be and navigate the world of freelance. I found that with the Producers Guild. My career would not be where it is without that mentorship. And then I got so excited. I kept moving up with the guild as my career moved up. So I work to support other producers in the same way and to learn from them. So I'm excited.
Ryan, we'll move to you next. You're still muted. There you go.
Hi, so I'm Ryan Hastings. I'm with the Screen Actors Guild in the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. The official title is SAG-AFTRA. You'll often hear people just refer to it as SAG, but SAG-AFTRA. And we are the union that oversees pretty much what we would say anyone in front of a video camera or behind a microphone. So all of the talent. We cover audiobooks, some podcasts, television, film, video games, stunt performers. So we are the union that makes sure they're protected when they work and that they're paid appropriately for the work that they do. I've been with them now for almost 6 years. Before that, I used to live in Chicago working for Actors Equity, which is the union that protects stage actors and stage managers, both of them, at Actors Equity. And moved to DC about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And unlike Katy and Dave, Katy is a producer, Dave was a member of IA. I was never a performer. I've never had any interest in being a performer because I realized early on that kind of freelance kind of gig, what I like to kind of think of as like gypsy lifestyle wasn't for me. I emotionally couldn't handle it. And I was in a much happier position helping performers. There's a lot of, one thing I like to do when I talk to classes is there's a lot of other positions in the entertainment industry that aren't, performers, because everybody always thinks, oh, I'm going to go into acting, do all this stuff. There's other positions. So if you can imagine yourself doing something besides acting, I completely encourage you to go for it. There's a lot of people who do need the support, which is why I got into unionism, specifically with actors, to be the support that they need when going out there. Because a lot of actors, you ask them to do something, they'll say yes. So they need somebody behind them, looking out for them, setting the rules, which is, what SAG-AFTRA is really great for, is to making sure that they're protected.
You really like paperwork.
I love paperwork. I love paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. It's all great. And reading.
All of those things. So it's not on their side. And David, to you.
All right. Again, my name is David O'Farrell. I'm currently the business agent for the Mid-Atlantic Studio Mechanics and Broadcast Technicians. We consider Local 487 of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technicians, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States, its territories, and Canada, which you can now understand why we just refer to ourselves as the IA. We represent all the behind the scenes, below the line technicians. Specifically, my local represents pretty much everything but camera, makeup, and hair, but they're all under the IA umbrella as our production office coordinators and accountants. We cover everything from motion pictures to television to commercials, some documentaries, corporate videos. So we're doing all of that behind the scenes. Personally, I've been involved in the industry for 35 years. I started out freelance. I'm one of those people who, when the market was smaller, did a little bit of everything. So I've literally done every position but an lighting technician, because I know I'd electrocute myself, and a medic, because I am the last person you want helping you if you need a medic. I've been with the local for close to 30 years, and I've had various and sundry jobs with them. As a local, we cover Maryland, DC, and all of Virginia. And our main responsibility is negotiating contracts, enforcing contracts for things like wages, benefits, which are included in all our agreements, meaning health and retirement, as well as safety issues. And we also have a very robust, through our international training program, which we make available to all our members, everything from safety training to hands-on training within particular departments. I think that's the easy intro. Sarah, you're muted.
So a lot of my students I know want to be DPs or directors. So they're going to have to work very closely with producers and crew and actors. So can you just talk about what your organization's role has, how you help support productions, and what a director would need to know when putting together a production as regarding, like, especially SAG-AFTRA or IATSE?
Sure. So I would say that for SAG-AFTRA, your connection to as a director coming to us is going to be closer probably than when you've moved up the ladder and you're producing a full budget theatrical, the next Avengers movie. When you're working on the smaller budget, we are really there to help you hire performers and work with them. One thing that I really love about using SAG-AFTRA performers is you really do notice like the difference in getting the work done. Like if you hire your friends for a film, you might be hanging around, playing around, they might not know their lines. But when you hire a SAG-AFTRA performer for commercials, TV shows, those kind of things, they're going to come do the job and leave. So we often hear with DC is, you might have heard it, a bit of a political town. So there are government agencies. They do a lot of like training films and keep the money tight. So when you hire a SAG-AFTRA performer, they come in, do the work, save money. We're there so that when you call us, we will just say, great, here are the rules to working with performers. You don't have to work from the ground up. And we're there, myself as staff, to help you understand those rules. The rule book's quite big, but people have been making films for ages, commercials for ages. Like you don't need to figure out, okay, we should break at these points. We just give you the rules for how the production's going to work to make things ultimately easier for you. Since we all are in this together to create, ultimately I think to create art, to create entertainment. That in this instance, working with SAG-AFTRA performers, that's not something you need to worry about with how they're going to be treated. But the reason we exist is you're hiring employees to do work. So we're working with legal contracts, and that's the other part that we're there to make sure to protect our performers, but also to protect you. So it's kind of like a great two-way street.
I love that description because I feel so often we hear, oh, we have to do this because SAG-AFTRA requires us to. But thinking of it as a different mindset of, oh no, people work better under certain conditions, and we have figured out what those conditions are. And so therefore, we're telling you, hey, you need to take a break at this point because you're going to burn people out and you're not going to have a great production. And I love that mentality of hearing it described that way.
Well, thank you.
And that's very true. Going back to your original question about the director in conjunction with the crew, generally it's the producer that puts together the crew that surrounds the director. A director may have their gaffer that they absolutely have to have because they work together, and the director and the DP are going to work together to pull that together. But generally the rest of the crew is the producer. We're pulling those people together to see that the project comes out the best way possible and to pull together the best people possible.
I'm going to take that. Yeah, the producer's role is to arrange all of the physical elements of production. And that includes all of the departments that you would hire for a film, which includes obviously crew, actors, and actually includes the director. The director is considered a department head. For the purposes of smaller films, many times the director is serving both a producer and director role. But in larger films, you would see those as two separate individuals. It's also why we're not a union, because the producer is considered the boss of the film. So we're not able to unionize. But below the line producers have some other options. Some of them are eligible for IA and some other things. But yeah, so you want to think, so the producer is the one who negotiates the roles with the contracts with the unions, and who manages those payments and the payments to the crew and everyone, and ultimately has the last leg of responsibility to make sure that everybody is safe on set.
I just saw a hand, but it looked like it was away. Does someone have a question? Okay, so I kind of want to jump into what we were talking about before we got started, and since let's stay timely because we're all, you know, in a Zoom meeting right now. So I'm going to pivot this conversation a little bit differently than if we were in the classroom. Can you talk a little bit about how your organization has been supporting members through this pandemic crisis that we've been going through?
Sure. The IA has taken a very active part in supporting its membership, not just getting information out to them about applying for unemployment or other benefits that may be out there, or some of the other organizations that are out there that can help out, but they formed IATSE Cares, which is a group where they've asked members to volunteer and be there for one another. So if there's some of our retired members who can't get out and go shopping maybe, or if it's just you need somebody to talk to, there have been people who have volunteered to do that. So between that and just making a wealth of information available to everybody on how the government programs are working, how they're going to affect us. People may have seen in the press, we had, I think it was 110,000, close to 110,000 letters that were written to Congress to make sure that gig and freelance workers were supported in that last go round. I know SAG-AFTRA had, I'm sure, hundreds of people, not thousands, I'm sorry, writing letters for the same thing. So Congress was inundated, we were heard, and so that gig workers, freelancers, independent contractors were included in that program, in those programs, in order to help cushion the blow, because work just, it stopped for everyone. Some companies, mostly the majors, but some of the smaller companies did go as far as paying people for 2 weeks or a few days worth of work as we got into this thing, but there's, you know, an end to that as well. So our biggest thing is just making as much information as possible to as many people as possible to help them out.
I would say SAG-AFTRA is doing the same. What's actually interesting, you know, when people think about SAG-AFTRA, and you know, I do talk about it frequently, most of all is that we oversee film and TV work. There isn't a whole other branch of SAG-AFTRA that is covering broadcasters. So while television and film work might, you know, is currently paused, we still have broadcasters across the country working every day, going out into the field. So SAG-AFTRA is doing a very active effort in working with producers to make sure that those employees are safe when they are still doing their job, to help educate and keep America informed during this crisis. So we are still working and you know, on helping those broadcast members be safe when they're working. As for the performers, the entertainment folks, we're doing something very similar to what, you know, Dave and the IA is that we're trying to make sure our members have as much information as they need. Yesterday, Gabrielle Carteras and David White, Gabrielle is SAG-AFTRA's president. and David White is SAG-AFTRA's executive director, held I think it was like an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting on how to file for unemployment and how it works in various states. Because in our industry, you're working in a variety of different states, and each state has different unemployment rules and how to qualify for it. So it's a different kind of mindset versus somebody who might have worked in a building or, you know, in a state for 5-6 years. You know, these people are going to different states for a variety of time periods. So we're wanting to make sure the members have the information that they need, but the whole industry hasn't stopped. So we need to make sure we're still there, helping people and getting the things that they need to them.
The Guild has sort of two levels of response. You know, we are a national organization, so there's this sort of organized national response, and then we are also a local organization, so there's been a very local response. Nationally, we launched the Guild Fund, which allows our members to apply for financial assistance. Unfortunately, that fund is basically philanthropic donations from members. So there's some expectation that it will run out. So we're continuing to kind of encourage those members that are have some advantage at this time to continue to donate. But for members who are really suffering, because this has had a very, I refer to it as a very democratic impact. So top studio heads and independent producers alike are all sort of frozen in place and have lost quite a bit of revenue. Our members locally are very largely independent contractors, or they run small production companies. So we've been providing assistance in applying for the small business loans, which provide payroll assistance so that they can keep their staff paid. And anything we can do to kind of help keep the staff of those businesses moving. That's something that we're really trying to work with producers on. We're doing a lot of creative workshops to help people sort of start thinking creatively about how we produce content within this. You know, we're working on an archival producing seminar. We've got a lot of content that's launching online. I'm kind of impressed with our staff, how quickly they've pivoted to online content. The first one out was on mental health and staying mentally healthy during this time. But we've got a lot of that stuff. And then locally, we have 2 meetings a week. One just supporting producers who are moving into live streaming, and one supporting more general content conversations. It's largely for producers to connect, but we've always felt that our advantage is, I think all of us feel that we have the most professional representation of our field in our organization. So just trying to get professional producers to collaborate so that we can, you know, continue to keep content moving. And then we've got a list that we put together where you can let us know if you're looking, and that you have particularly, we've always had this list that we send out locally to employers if you're looking for producers, or if you're a director that wants to pair up with a producer who has the type of experience that you want. But then also now we've asked everybody, do you have live stream content? Do you have experience? Do you have experience working in remote management of teams? Do you have, you know, that kind of stuff? So we can send that out to employers. So
that sounds really useful. So you talked a little bit about mentorship within your organization. Can you just elaborate on what type of opportunities you provide for your members? Because it sounds like PGA thrives a lot for producers.
We have 2 forms. I mean, one is informal. Informal mentorship. You come in. Again, I feel that we are a very generous organization. It can be a little isolating if you're not in, but once you're in, everybody's like, "Look at you, you're here." And so it's very easy to sort of say, "Hey, I'm interested in this, and you're really good at it. Can I learn from you?" And everybody's been very generous with their time. Internally, there is a formal mentorship program as well. We do group mentorships. I mean, again, because we have the whole gamut, we have a lot of very experienced producers. Our presidents are major studio heads, and they will take time out and do group mentorship for folks. So we have very formal and very informal opportunities. We don't have an established formal mentorship program here in DC because we're still quite small. But that's sort of what we're looking at moving towards in the next year.
So for Ryan, we were talking about this a little bit before, and Katy, you too. A lot of productions have been put on hold right now, so I know it's definitely hitting David's people. But I feel like a lot of productions are then going to be ramping up all at the same time, all at once this ends. What recommendations, if any, do you have for students who might be graduating in May or next December to kind of start thinking about now to prepare themselves for this influx of work that's about to happen? If you have any.
I don't know, Katy, maybe you do. So maybe feel free to jump in. I still don't know what the world is going to look like right on the other side. We all have ideas of, what's going to happen. But one thing I think that's going to be really impactful on our industry is, imagine, when Wonder Woman shot here in DC, what was it, 2018? They were down in the mall, 400 or 500 people. That's not something we're probably going to see for a while. I've been thinking that we're probably going to see a lot of, people sitting at a table talking, the Quentin Tarantino-esque kind of films for a while. I think the best way to prepare is, and I think it's perfect for our industry, is people are going to have to get really creative on the content they make. And I think we're going to start seeing that happening because we have tools. There's so many new pieces of technology that can be used. But how? How can you still, our performers love a good story. It doesn't matter what it is. Performers just love to have a good character, good stories. A one-person show is some of the times the most amazing theater. It's just going to be about how to capture that in a good, safe way. So I would the box that film has existed in for a while is going to have to change. TV is going to have to change. And it's just trying to figure out and playing around and failing for a few months. Try something, fail, try something else. But that's the best thing is trying to figure out what story exists now and, find a good actor friend and say, let's play around for a while. If you don't record it, I'm good.
I would say there's sort of two practical pieces. I am a GMU alumni. And when I graduated, the industry had also sort of sunk itself in a giant hole. And I was competing as a PA against people who had been APs and producers, and it's rough, and I ate a lot of ramen. But I would say the one thing I did well, which really benefited me, is join Women in Film and Video. And I think if you're just starting out, I think it's a wonderful organization. Fully support it. And I would not have a job at all if I had not joined Women in Film and Video early on, and just mined that listserv for every single opportunity that came my way. And I worked unpaid, and I know we're not supposed to recommend that at all. And I'm sorry, this is being recorded, but it got me enough contacts to start getting paid and just show up and treat every single job, because it's going to be so competitive. There's going to be so many opportunities, but it's going to be so competitive, and people are not going to have patience because they are broke and they need their productions to work. So whether you're paid, unpaid, whatever, show up on time and do the job, and show them what you can do. I think that's, just behaving with a professional and as a professional and showing everybody how professional you are is really, really important. And slowly it works, not as quickly as you want, but it does work. And then there's a very democratic process that's happening right now, which is that we are all locked in our house, and the only way we can get out is the internet. So young people, I feel like, I'm going to overgeneralize, have a lot more facility to create internet content, and to take advantage of that time. And I think there's always you want to partner with high-level professionals when you can, and you want to do your own thing when you can. And you want to sort of balance between those two, because doing your own content lets you be as creative as you need to be and develop your storytelling skills. and show us something that we've never seen before. And then working with high-end professionals teaches you how to actually organize that and make some money out of it. So you want to kind of balance those two. So you've got a great opportunity to compete in a space that some people really don't know a lot about. So make something cool.
For us, it's just what's the level of work that comes back? And I don't think anybody can answer that. There's so many shows that pulled the plug partway through. So we had Swagger for Apple down in Richmond that still had 2.5 months worth of shooting. We had The President is Missing for Showtime, which was 5 days into their pilot. There's hundreds and hundreds of shows that were in process when all of this happened and they pulled the plug. The problem being when they go back in, there were also projects that were scheduled after that. And especially with the actors, if their commitments, it's going to push back certain projects in the pipeline. So I don't think there's anybody in the industry right now that could give you an idea of how all this is going to play out. When we're able to go back to work, there will be work. And it's just a matter of how much and where the opportunities are. And there'll be opportunities hopefully locally, but there may be opportunities elsewhere in the country. Georgia, and this all comes right back to tax credits and film incentives. And I can tell you, Maryland and Virginia are going to have about $12 million apiece for tax credits. Both states do very well with the amounts they have, but it's nowhere near the levels of a Georgia or the Carolinas or Pennsylvania with, I believe they're at 30 million. It's 330 million in California. So it's, where are those opportunities going to be? Now, there's also a lot of non-union work that goes on out there. And that's a great place to get started, looking for the smaller projects. And, SAG-AFTRA has deals that work with lower budgeted projects than we normally do. Our low end is around $500,000, depending on the length of the project and what it's for. So it's, the tough part has always been, where are the opportunities? I started as a PA back in 1985. It was the same problem then as it is now. Where are those opportunities? How do you get in there? And it's through organizations like Women in Film and Video, with relationships you can have there. I had someone mentor me all those years ago. So, I'm putting myself out there now as a resource. And I'm sure they can make a way where you can get a hold of me. If I can point people in the right direction, if there's something going on, I know there's a number of projects that want to come through DC. We call it the Monument Tour, where a show comes in for 2-3 days. Harrison Ford stands in front of the Treasury building and waves, and they move on. But those projects are work too. And, we don't turn any of it down, whether they're there for months, like Wonder Woman was a couple of years ago, to 2 or 3 days. All of it is work, and it's good work.
So David, you've been working in the industry the area for 35 years. Can you just talk a little bit about your path from going to a PA up the chain?
Well, it came out of when I started in '85. It was a very small community here. There weren't a lot of people doing it. So it was easier to kind of move up and move around. Also, there was much more commercial work going on, and there was regular film work going on due to the fact that back then there weren't tax credits. So people could go where they wanted to. But John Waters was working, so I got to work with him, and we had a producer come in that did Clara's Heart that had liked it so much and liked the crew, they went on to do Her Alibi. Um, and then the things that come through DC, but there was so much commercial work. I actually stopped doing features and television because I made more doing commercials at the time. Then years ago, there was a strike against the commercial production companies, and it's never quite recovered from the way it was, even though there's more avenues out there for these commercials to air. But it was really, I started out as a production assistant, and then I've been an AD, I've been a production coordinator, I've been a location manager. Like I said, everything but electric, lighting technician. We have to be careful with that, and medic, because that was the time. Now, there's many, many more people in this region who are doing the work. I mean, just within the union, we've got about 600 and actually better than 700 members between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Before you could count the crew, we moved from one project to the next project to the next project to the next project. That still happens to a degree unless we get overlap. Last year, we had The Walking Dead Worlds Beyond in Richmond. We had Swagger, and we had The Good Lord Bird, Ethan Hawke's project for Showtime, all overlap, which created opportunities. So that's what we need, is that overlap of these projects, because then it allows new people to come in and get on in these union positions. Certainly the best way to get started is a PA. Production assistants are in more and more of the departments than it used to be. It used to be you usually worked with the ADs or in the production office. Now the departments are getting PAs, and the only thing we insist on, no one covers PAs at this point. It's not to say it won't happen, but nobody covers production assistants. But if you get into a department and you're doing covered work, then we as a union see that you're covered as though you were a union member. We don't make it just about union members only deals. If you're doing the covered work, you get covered. And that means higher wages, benefits, and all the protections that come under one of our agreements. That's the broad version of my story. If you really want to get into the minutia, we'll do one of these, just me, for about 4 hours.
That's fair. And then, because you kind of mentioned it, can you just explain a little bit more what a covered production means? Like, what does it mean when you have union workers on set, and as far as like safety and guidelines?
Okay. Well, in all our agreements, and we have multiple agreements that do everything from the majors, the Warner Brothers, the Comcast Universals, down to independent agreements. Or depending on the budget, we have what we call the tiered agreements. But all of these agreements share the same basic things. They set a wage for the job within the departments we cover. They set benefits. So there is money that's paid in on top of your wages to health, a health plan, and then a 401k and a pension. So that's in addition to, sets guidelines like you have to be fed every 6 hours, which is really important. When a well-fed crew, no matter whatever the size of your production is, if you feed them and they are happy, you have a better crew. So that's not just a union thing. If you are more, in some of our agreements, if you're more than 60 miles from a production location, there may be housing that's required, the hotel room or some kind of housing allowance. There may be per diems involved for that time. So for any meal they don't give you on the production, you get money for the other one. And then things like safety, things like if you're doing 2 14-hour days in a row, some of our agreements say you have to be offered a hotel room or a ride home. language about if you feel you're unsafe at any point on a production, that you can refuse to do the work and they can't fire you for refusing anything that makes them feel unsafe. It's, and there's a number of, and then we also have guidelines in there about our training, so that we're making sure that people are trained on before they go on a high lift, because we do a lot of work in a lot of ceilings of warehouses on that and on building sets. But if you're going on high lifts, if you're using certain equipment, that you're trained for that. We've also started to build into our bigger agreements harassment training, which is becomes so key in the recent past, and probably should have been there a long time before that, but that is now some of the required training that's going on. So it's trying to put all those protections in there, and my biggest job is being an advocate for the members, whether it be when a production first comes in, while the production's here, or real quick, I got into filmmaking and production because I was a political science major. I worked at City Hall in Baltimore and found out what politics could really be like and wanted to get out of it. Now I spend the bulk of my time in Annapolis and in Richmond and in Washington, D.C., lobbying for tax credits and protections for workers. So I'm right back into exactly what I tried to get away from.
So basically, when all the big productions are coming to town and have an ear.
Usually, yeah. They're supposed to give us notice that they're coming in every once in a while. We'll get notice well in advance. Like I knew almost a year in advance before like Wonder Woman came in, or it was months in advance with Swagger, and President's Missing was over a year. But then occasionally you'll get things that'll come through where you might get a couple of weeks notice that they fit it into their schedule. There was one last year, Without Remorse, which I think shot mostly in Montreal, came to DC for the Monument Tour. And I didn't have quite as much notice about that one. But generally with features and television, yeah, plenty of notice. Commercials, rarely. And that's something we're always working on.
I'm glad you all mentioned WIF. I'm a board member for WIF, and I think every single class of my students have heard me talk about women in film and video. Absolutely recommend everyone in the film industry to become a member. I'm going to plug us again. We have over 900 members, and it's not just for women. It's not just for people in the film and video industry. Our name has changed over the past 40 years, or our organization has changed over the past 40 years. So I highly recommend anyone becoming a member if you're a media professional in the area. We have a listserv that goes out to all of our members daily, and we have I think about 80 programs a year, so it's almost twice a week. So if anyone has any questions about it.
And along the lines with those, there's two other organizations out there, depending on where you are. There's the Maryland Film Industry Coalition, which is very active in Maryland. I've sat on the board in the past. Ryan's currently on the board. And then the Virginia Production Alliance, the VPA. They have chapters in Richmond, Northern Virginia, right by you all, and then down in the Hampton Roads area. They're very active and do monthly meetings usually, where they'll have guest speakers come in. They also do the Virginia State of the Industry events in each of those areas. The Northern Virginia one and the Hampton Roads, I believe, have been put off due to the current situation, but they should get rescheduled. But it's worth taking a look at their websites, getting on their mailing lists. So when there are events, you can attend those, because this is one of those industries. It's being in the right place at the right time, and who you know. And then if you got the skills, that's almost a bonus. It's important to get out there and meet people in the industry. You just don't know when that opportunity is going to come up for you.
Chris, you had a question?
This is for Katy. A question I have for you is, what are some tips for dealing with directors or other crew members that are especially difficult to work with?
Oh, that's such a tough one. I mean, I think the same answer is good for any conflict resolution situation. You always try to want to see it from the other person's point of view. I think as a producer, you always have a very strong direction of your own that you can't be afraid to feel strongly about. But you have to recognize that filmmaking is a collaborative process, and allow other people to feel creatively satisfied with the work that you're doing too. I can tell you when I first started in the field, going out, I was a younger woman. And I had a lot of directors of photography I was working with who didn't believe me when I told them what shots they were going to take. I used to bet them, and I don't know that that's a thing I would recommend, but I would say, look, I will bet you money that I'm going to put that in the film. So I'm not sure. I'm hearing a lot of feedback, so I got distracted. Sorry, but I don't know. This is an evolving question that everybody has, and every single I would always say, if you're having a conflict with somebody, you take them aside. You don't ever confront them in front of the whole crew. You take people aside and you say, look, we're going to work this out now. Let me hear your side of it, and let me hear what you have to do, and really try to take it on, take in what they're saying to you. As a producer, I think you always want to hold back as much as you can, because you want people to continue to work with you. So I think was that helpful? And don't gamble with them. That's probably a bad idea, but it did work. And I usually got the shots that I needed. I always get the shots I need.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, and from a producer's perspective, I think it's also important that if you're having difficulty with an actor, or if you're having difficulty with a member of the crew, the unions can help out if it's a union job and position. It's a lot of times we'll have, if a crew member is having a problem with another crew member, we always recommend they go through the production, and there's discussions with the UPM or supervising producer, and now more often than not they get HR for the particular company involved. But as a producer, absolutely, if it's an independent situation, you want to pull the person aside and talk with them. If it's a union thing, we have shop stewards on every job who people can talk to, and then certainly I'm a person, and I've gotten involved in those sort of things myself. And it's usually the people who are really difficult. It depends on what they're doing, but you may have to put up with some of it. Or if they're connected to somebody else on the production, that can be a difficult and sticky situation. Just treat them all as discreetly as possible until you can't anymore.
Okay, that makes sense.
Legends about screaming matches on the sets and stuff, that you hear those legends because that's bad behavior. That is not professional behavior from anyone. But it's understandable, because tensions and feelings of creative involvement can be very personal, and you need to sort of remove yourself from the personal, and remember that most people always assume good intent, and always assume that the person that is confronting you has some passionate reason behind it, whether or not you agree that they are correct.
Okay. Okay.
Ryan, did you want to jump in?
I mean, I would just be repeating it. I think Katy said it a while ago, but being good to work with, right? It does, you know, I don't think it means being, you know, allowing people to walk over you. And so for a lot of our performers, and you know, Dave mentioned this too with the crew, is I get into sometimes conversations with both production and members, and have to remind performers, because they're the ones I'm speaking to, is that it's not personal, right? Like nobody had any ill will against them. You know, it's with, I think, our artists, the artists that I represent, you know, they're putting themselves out there in a very vulnerable position. So emotions sometimes are very, very high. But, you know, once we step back, I encourage them, you know, don't make a scene on set. You know, a lot of this stuff is stuff we can resolve later. There is always that line too where, you know, if we're getting into something that's like, you know, harassment or, you know, a verbal altercation, that's completely not really kind of what we're talking about at this point. That's a separate thing. But, you know, just daily things that might result in an interruption, just call us. I always tell people they can call, text me from set, but that no one has ill will towards them. Everybody is going into this with kind of like the best intentions that they possibly can. And that's, you know, something important to keep in mind.
Understood. Thank you.
Also feed, like, believe it or not, the number one, I didn't believe this when I started doing this, you know, what, almost 11 years ago now, is everyone's like, oh, food's the number one issue. Food is definitely the number one issue on set, which is shocking. I would say probably 30 to 40% of my calls or claims might be food based.
Okay.
I work with non-union crews a lot as a documentary producer, but it's still the same advice. And when I call my crews before a shoot, if I'm trying to prepare everything, I'm talking to them about what we're doing or whatever. One of my questions is always like, what snacks do you like? And I know that seems like a silly question, but like everybody's always like, oh, nobody's asked me that. And they like love that question. So if somebody wants chocolate covered almonds on set, they will have chocolate covered almonds. If they want, you know, kiwi, fine, whatever. Like if that's what it takes to make a happy crew. So I think trying to think ahead and communicate with your crew as much as possible about what the goals are also helps to stave off altercations and frustrations.
Okay.
I can say from, you know, back in '85 when I started, craft service, which is something the union covers, used to be there'd be a 6-foot table set up. There might be regular coffee on there, some bagels, some donuts, some candy, you know, a basket of fruit, and that was about it. Now, if you go out on a major set, and a lot of sets, it's, you know, the craft service is making sandwiches for and carrying them around all day for people, or they're getting one show had every week would have, you know, an ice cream truck show up or a snow cone truck show up or something, but they're having breakfast available for everybody when they get there. And the craft service table, well, you know, layouts of meats and cheeses, and you know, craft service now is better than catering used to be back in the day, and in a lot of cases. And the caterers are all great too. The biggest hazard, I think, to production these days is, you know, because of the time standing around waiting for to set up the next shot or do whatever you have to do next, is people putting on weight, because there is just so much food available. And even when it was minor, I mean, I put on about 20 pounds over 3 shows.
That was such a great question, Chris. Your responses as well.
Thank you, Professor.
Do we have other questions from our participants?
Come on, there's got to be a million questions out there. Ask anything you want.
So that was me. I had something I wanted to say, which is just that one thing that the Producers Guild offers, and you don't have to be a member to take advantage. It goes back to something David was saying about anti-harassment training. Most major productions have are able to offer that, but for independent films that have staff of less than 20, we offer free anti-harassment training, so we can come to a production and well, not me personally, I'm not trained to do it, but we can have someone come and conduct that training so that you can stay within good guidelines of safe sets.
Well, and like I said, we've got the training available. It's online. And then we also have anonymous numbers you can call. So if you feel there is a safety violation or harassment violation, that you can call, you know, even anonymously, to do that through our international, as well as the studios all now post on call sheets. They have ways of reporting that, because let's face it, you know, the biggest concern people have with reporting anything, with any kind of bad behavior on set, is you don't want to be seen as the one rocking the boat, because that can potentially harm their ability to get work down the road, because other people are going, you know, that person. And that is one of the biggest things, you know, we struggle against, is, you know, letting people be able to do that, and to hold it against people. So one of the things I've started doing, and I'm sure others out there are doing, is if somebody comes to me with a problem, if I can keep somebody specifically out of it and still deal with it, I do. If I'm going to have to use a person's name because it is for a particular incident, or wasn't something that someone had just seen, then I make sure the individual knows before I do anything how I'm going to proceed and what I'm intending on doing. So I think, you know, that's key for us, is being there for our members, but being sensitive to their needs, and to ensure that everything's done with the least amount of disruption possible to their lives and to production.
Yeah, on the same, and I see there's some questions in chat that we'll touch in a sec, but SAG-AFTRA has also taken a very proactive effort with harassment and protections, not just on set, but actually back, you know, starting with auditions is, you know, one thing that in the place we're sitting now goes, oh, of course, that seems really obvious, but, you know, we've put in place that you shouldn't be auditioning in hotel rooms, right? And you say that, you know, I say that, I've said that before, you're like, oh, of course, why would anybody do that? People did that, you know, so we want to put protections in place for performers, because, as Dave said, you don't want to cause trouble, you don't want to stick out, you don't want to, you know, nobody wants to be the person to say, I don't want to do this, when it's completely in your right to say, I don't want to do this. So it's at that point the union can step in and go, no one's doing this, right? Another thing we're doing, just in that same vein, is on sets, we're encouraging guidelines and rules for intimacy coordinators. You know, we have stunt coordinators who make sure people are safe and everyone's taken care of when a stunt's happening. We want the same protections there if somebody is going to be doing an intimate scene, or if there's nudity. You know, we have some rules already, you know, no photography on set, closed set, stuff like that. But we want to make sure any performer is going to be safe and protected. Not just, you know, definitely for the performer, but also for the producers and the crew and everyone else, so that we all know the rules walking into the scene. You know, it always comes back to communication, and if we all know the rules, we can all operate from them, and make sure everyone's treated the way they should be treated. But jump back. Christian asked earlier if there was for crafty and meals, is there a limit where it is no longer feasible or reasonable to provide food for somebody with severe dietary restrictions? Asking as someone with a lot of food allergies. You know, this sometimes, I will say for performers, this sometimes comes up from time to time. It always comes to number one, communicating usually to the background casting person or the principal casting person when they come to set. Usually the larger principal names would be able to put something out saying, make sure this is on set. But for background folks, if they're working, making sure people know as well. But I'm always blown away by what Crafty puts out there and the variety of things that are there. People need to be fed. And there's that different line I say from at least where I'm sitting, and Katy and David, you can jump in if you disagree, is there's a difference between not wanting to eat the food and not being able to be. So that's kind of where I walk with things with my folks.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any limit to that, and you should be able to go to craft service and let them know. And craft service will go out of their way to make sure they have items available to you that fit that dietary restriction. And the same with going to production and just letting them know, or talking directly to the caterer. They will always, in my experience, make accommodations for any kind of dietary restrictions. I know, catering will always usually have, maybe a couple of meat dishes, but they'll always have a vegetarian dish available. So expanding that beyond to other dietary restrictions to make, whether it's peanuts or grains or whatever, they will find a way and not hold that against you for, doing that. They'll accommodate you.
I'm going to offer that I'm a documentary producer, so I'm normally craft services. I'm also, for me, if I'm hiring a crew, it's normally only about 4 or 5 people that we're going out on a field shoot with. So it's not a huge problem if somebody says, like, I can only eat this, and then we can usually accommodate it. We're here to make our crew happy because we are going to ask a lot. We move all day, so we want to make sure that people are fed and healthy. And if you're the PA, then you're probably the one getting the snacks. So win for you. You could pick whatever we eat.
So Marcus had a really good question. Are there any guidelines or penalties if someone wants to leave the union? So I guess David or Ryan.
For us, it's if you, well, we got a couple of ways you can do it. You can take an honorable withdrawal, or you can just let your membership lapse, which then makes it more difficult to get back in if you want to do it down the road versus the honorable withdrawal. The penalty is, it's unlikely you're going to be able to work on a union production. Occasionally we get to the point where we have a need of, we don't have enough crew when we have overlap, and people who are either non-union or who are in the union maybe out might get an opportunity. But usually those non-union people end up joining, and the other people end up making themselves right to get back in. But the only penalty is, you're not supposed to take union work. But because of our relationships with most of the producers and them looking at our they get our roster when they come in, and we make avenues available for people to get resumes to the productions. There's not so much of that as there used to be.
For us, I try and encourage people, I think joining a union, joining SAG-AFTRA, those are very personal decisions. And we can't make kind of like a blanket statement. I try not to, that everybody should join a union at this point, or if, this thing happens, you need to look for, other options. But to join is a big decision. So, you have to, there's an initiation fee, there's dues, all of those things, would be lost if you try and leave. But it's, very similar to, what Dave said, is we have a variety of different membership statuses. Is if, you're not working for a while, you can go on honorable withdrawal for a bit. We have a lot of people who are members who, don't work. As a SAG-AFTRA member, and Dave always, doesn't like when I bring it up, but, as a member, one of the benefits is you get the huge stack of DVD screeners to vote in the SAG Awards every year. And it's cheaper to get that stack of DVDs than it is to, go see every single movie in the theater. So sometimes I encourage people, I'm like, if you're not working, just, you know, sit at home, pay your dues, get the movies, and it's kind of a nice thing to get. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that, you know, I wouldn't really want to answer that question exactly, because I think a person's membership is a very personal thing, and there's not kind of like a blanket way to treat it for each person.
And the only reason he puts up the screeners is the crew, for the most part, doesn't get them. So we don't have a vote in any of the Academy voting and any of the Emmy voting, unless you're department heads in certain departments. So for the bulk of us, we don't get the free screeners, and they won't let me join SAG-AFTRA just so I can.
We also offer screeners.
So anyway, join those guys, get the free movies, join us, and
get healthcare. But if you don't pay your dues, you can't attend any of our events. Obviously, you wouldn't get the sort of educational things that we offer. There's two ways to do it. You can put yourself on hold. You can take a pause, which a lot of people do if they have, like, you know, if they're taking a break from the industry, particularly if they are taking care of sick relatives or deciding to pursue another avenue right now. And then we have a lot of people who keep paying their dues, because even if they've switched from the industry because they like getting the screeners, who are now lawyers or whatever. Yeah, so it's up to you. If you just stop paying your dues and don't put yourself on pause, and then you try to come back in, you will have to pay your back dues. So definitely put yourself on pause. That would be very helpful for all of us.
Can I jump back to a question? Mira had made a comment about, since it's a union theme, it might be worth pointing out that if you're non-union, you better not jump the line on a union set. Talk about issues over food. There's a reason for that. Most of the union crew, their meal period, especially the first one, comes out of their work time, but they're also the first ones back. So it's making sure that crew gets through first. And so that, because once the last person in line goes through, their half an hour to an hour break starts. And at the end of that, they go directly back to work. When you're non-union, or a lot of time with the extras, you know, you're going to go back to holding for a while my crew is setting up the next shot and they're doing the blocking or whatever. So that's the big reason for that. So hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you for covering that. Marcus had a good question. Not Marcus, sorry. Zach had a really good question that I liked. And he was wondering what the biggest mistake each of you has seen in new people coming into the industry.
That's an easy one for me. The biggest mistake you can make is going out on a set and pretending, or going out under the pretense that you know how to do something you don't know how to do. You know, within the lighting department, if say you get a phone call out of the blue and they say, hey, can you know, we just need a third electric, somebody to hump cable and help us set lights up, get things from the truck, and you say yes, and you go out there and they say, go grab a tweenie off the truck, I can guarantee you nothing on that truck is labeled tweenie. Because everything's referred to by their nicknames. So even, you know, you're not going to generally see a label for Apple boxes, something as simple as that, or C stands. So you have to know, don't ever go in, you know, maybe they do just need somebody to hump cable around set, and it's backbreaking and it's annoying, but it's an entrance into it. The only other thing you can do is when somebody asks you to do something and you try to tell them you have a better way of doing it. That is not the time for that. There's plenty of time for standing around later, and there's a lot of strange things or different ways we do things on set that don't always quite make as much sense as you might think, but they're done that way for a very particular reason. Years ago, we constructed an Oval Office, one of the many we constructed over the years, and the crew built it solid. It wasn't going anywhere. Well, they didn't know they needed to put in wild walls so that they could pull a wall out to roll the camera in or to do things from different angles, and they had to dismantle the entire set and put it back together again. So it's just never ever misrepresent what it is. You're better off telling somebody, I don't know how to do that, or I don't have a lift certification, so I can't go up in a lift and babysit a light all night on a night shoot, because they'll remember that over you get out there, you don't know how to do it. That annoys them more, and they're less likely to call you to come back. But if you're honest with them, they remember that. And, it may get you another opportunity down the road. It might just not be that particular one.
I'm going to follow up on David because he basically just said exactly what I would have said, pretending that you know something you don't know. And I think a lot of times too, I'm going to caution that when you leave school, you've been taught how to do things in a certain environment, so you're familiar with the workflow, but it isn't necessarily reflective of how it works on a professional set. So I think definitely, when you come onto a professional set, be humble and be willing to ask questions, and also be willing to take orders. All of us take orders. And remember when you're on a set that it is people's money, which is why we're moving as quickly as we possibly can. So just, listen to what people are telling you, and move as you can. And if you don't have something to do, don't just pick something up. Just stay out of the way. I think that's key too. I will tell you the PA that I always recommend, that like, this girl showed up with her own dolly on one of my sets, so she could cart water around. She's like, I know I have to move really quickly today, so I just brought my own dolly. I was like, you are, every single time I do a shoot, I call her. Now she's moved up. Now she's an associate producer, so I have to find somebody else to love. I've had PAs show up, and then when they show up with open-toed shoes, that's never, never, never do that. Late, no. But yeah, if you show up and you're super prepared, and I would also say, for me, the PAs serve the cameraman most. I can't always help. We're always a very small crew, so I can't always help the crew move equipment, that sort of stuff. So just a willingness to like listen to what the I said cameraman, but that was a very gender specific word. I apologize. The director of photography of any gender, please help them out and be willing to help them, so I can pay attention to what I'm doing. That's very important to me.
I don't know. I've been actually listening to Dave and Katy talk. I'm like, okay, what's mistake am I going to go with? I think a lot of it comes down to with performers asking. The biggest mistake is asking before they go to the job for what they really want, because they're going to come, they're going to perform that stuff, but the contract you sign beforehand is really going to dictate all of the other things. The money you get, the use, but there are things, I don't know if they're mistakes, but they break my heart when they happen. Like one thing is with performers, they have to essentially negotiate for credit. If you want a front card, where you'll position like in the credits, but you have to ask for that, negotiate it with your contract up front. And I've had some films that have gone to film festivals and done really well. And then I get a call from the performer asking, why, file a claim because their name wasn't in the opening credits. And it is heartbreaking to tell them that's something they would have had to have done, a year ago or more so. But I do encourage performers to ask for something. So I think what their mistake is, they're excited, usually very excited to get a role, and they're afraid of the role being taken away from them. And I've never had a production where somebody's like, oh, I'd like a little bit more money, or I want the largest trailer, and the producer goes, how dare you ask for that, I'm taking your role away, right? Like that's not something that we usually see. We usually just hear, well, no, that's not going to happen, here's your other offer. So I think that mistake is pretty much just asking for what you think you should have and what you want.
I would also say invoice. A lot of times, new folks to the production industry forget to invoice or don't know how to invoice. So definitely remember to invoice your crew after you're done working, and in a timely manner so we can close our books. We want to close our books. We want to pay you. Help us pay you.
And I think across the board in all of them, it goes back to, there are times when to ask questions, but right in the heat of things, a new setup or whatever is not necessarily the best time to learn. There's time on productions to learn about what's on the trucks. There's time in production to learn what other departments are doing, especially for, starting out as PAs. That there's enough downtime to ask those questions, but you might not want to ask the question when they're doing a setup. Ask the question of somebody while, if you want to know what a grip's doing or a prop person's doing or a set dresser's doing, any of the, you ask it when they're not working. It may be they're doing a take at the times and they're standing by, but they don't necessarily have to be active, because most of production, especially the bigger they get, is a lot of standing around and then running around like a crazy person, because by the time they've asked you the question, somebody asked for it 20 minutes ago. But by the time it works its way through the entire process, everybody's running to play catch up. So, just be on your toes, be aware of what's going around, and always be standing by. Don't wander off. Don't be looking at your phone. I had a production, I won't name which one, but I went around on their first day of shooting and had to yell at a bunch of the crew because they were playing Pokemon Go. That is not the place for it. It's, yes, we're all worried about our next job, so you can look at your phones, but it's not to be on your phone, not to be playing games. You're there, the production's paying you to be there for them, and that's why you're there.
Excellent. Thank you, David. I think every single person who's spoken to my class has said the same thing, so good to have that reiterated. So Hannah asked, have any of you guys worked with writers with the WGA, maybe Katy or Ryan?
Actually have not. National Geographic is not a signatory for the WGA, so it's not an option for us. I do wish Monica was here for that question.
And so my follow-up, and some of you have answered that, but do you have any good solid pieces of advice for students that are graduating and going into this film industry in either DC or beyond?
If you have an opportunity to meet with somebody, have informational interviews. It is who you know. I'm offering. Please feel free. I'm locked in my house. I'll talk to you. But yeah, I mean, if you can take somebody's time for 30 minutes and do an informational interview, learn how to really nail those down, they can be extremely informative.
Yeah, I just say get out there and meet as many people as you can and make as many connections as you can, because there's just no way to know exactly when that first opportunity is going to come up. But like I rolled, when I started out, I rolled from one production to the next production to the next production, and somebody thought of me for something else, and that's generally how it works. So it's about getting out there, meeting people through the different organizations that are out there. I know we're trying to do more outreach with schools and universities, so this is great. And like I said, I had somebody mentor me at the time, and I'm happy to answer questions. I may not be able to point you to a job every single time, but the more you might be in the right place at the right time.
And I would say, I think a big thing is just showing up. It's so easy not to do anything these days. One of my favorite things to do is cancel plans. It's like the biggest high I can think of. But just showing up is so beneficial, and it shows the people who are, that you're working with, that you're there. And right now I sometimes tell performers we're in a perfect time that if you know there's something you want to do and work on and it doesn't exist, make it. Like if you guys are also directors and writers and the piece of artwork that you want to work on doesn't exist, show up to the page, write it down, and figure out a way to make it. There are so many different platforms out there right now in existence that content is just so specific. It used to be, you're sitting there thinking of like Seinfeld for a wide audience. The stuff that they're making now it's for a very, very targeted audience. And so if you can make it and put it out there, somebody can find it, it might go somewhere too, which is fantastic. But there's a whole bunch of YouTube shows that became HBO shows, things like that. So show up, and if the thing to do isn't there, make it and show up for yourself.
I do think you get back the energy you put out. So, that's very esoteric, but whenever I'm unemployed, I'll try and send out 3 emails a day just to say, hey, hope we can have some coffee. Here's my resume. And it's never those people who give me a job, but some random other person who they forwarded it to and it went out somewhere, who will suddenly call me and go like, oh, hey, I hear you're looking, do you have some time to talk? You don't know how things are going to go. I think that's kind of David's point. Like, you just don't know who you're going to meet that's going to get you to where you need to be.
And it made me think another good avenue is film festivals. There's so many of them out there now, but there are directors and producers who are often there to produce their projects. It's an opportunity to ask them questions. But it's just another avenue, especially ones that have local productions that they show in those festivals, on top of the international or national stuff. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to meet people. And you may be talking to a producer or a director who's done a project in Utah that's in this festival, and they're going to do their next project, and the next project's going to be in Nevada, but they invite you out to work on it. You just never know where the opportunities are going to come from. So, it's just about being open, putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid to walk up and introduce yourself to people. There's no reason why you can't. So nobody is, there are people out there who will act that they're better, but for the most part, the people who really get production done are the normal, down-to-earth people who, if you're in a situation where and it doesn't matter, approach Steven Spielberg if he's available. If he's there, there's no reason not to go up and say hello and say you like his work. Tell him you don't like his work, but be confident enough. No, it's about being confident enough to go up and do that. You can't hang on the fringes and just expect things to happen. Even for my members, we don't place people on jobs. SAG-AFTRA doesn't place people on jobs like you hear about some other unions doing. Even the stage locals do place people on jobs. They have hiring halls. We don't. So it's producer's choice. If they want to hire you over somebody who's got 30 years of experience, they can do that. So it's about, being confident in yourself and getting out there and putting yourself out there and not being afraid of talking to whoever's there. And it doesn't matter how big they are in the industry, or small in the industry, where the opportunities are going to come from. And everybody's got their first film, and it doesn't matter if it's Christopher Nolan, Robert Rodriguez. They've all had, they all started out with their first films.
To follow up on the film festival, every film festival needs volunteers. Mm-hmm. And then you get access for free. And especially if you can work the check-in desk, that's the place, because then you're meeting every single person who comes in and has to pick up their badge. And then you're putting a name to a face immediately. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. everyone for joining us. Does anyone else have any other questions before we finish up our conversation?
There was an earlier question William Ferguson had about how does retirement work in unions. I'm really hoping you're not old enough to be asking that question. But for us, as I mentioned, they still call it an annuity, but it's really a 401k, and there's a pension that are paid into on behalf of all our members when they're working under a union agreement. That money is yours forever. So whether you do one production or another, there are some qualifications for the pension. But generally, when you get to retirement age, you're able to access those funds. And also right now with our 401k, they've been doing emergency distributions since the government waived the 10% penalty on the 401k. So in a case where you might need money that's been paid on your behalf, we don't encourage it because we want that money to be there for your retirement. And we want people to be able to retire and not have to work until they drop. But that's how it works on our end. So there are retirement plans. They are paid into over and above. The 401k also has the ability on the IA side, at least, that you can pay in, have additional money withheld from your paycheck if you wish to build that up.
And SAG-AFTRA also we have our it's called the SAG-AFTRA health plans, but we also, performers, members can qualify for a pension as well. And once they qualify, it'll pay out when they get of age. Works the same way, so I won't go for it. And they have their own website. Just, if you're really bored this weekend and you want to read health plan material, SAG-AFTRAhealthplans.org. It'll be good.
IATSE NBF.org. Same thing.
What's the NBF stand for?
National Benefit Fund.
Unfortunately, the Producers Guild does not offer a retirement plan because we are not a union. So most of our members either run their own companies and they have 401ks through their companies, or are employees, or privately invest and hope and pray and keep working until they die. So become a producer. It's great.
Somebody earlier had asked the question about are unions and guilds the same thing? More or less, it's just a gathering of people, and then it's what is offered within that. So it's just a group of people who have bonded together under a common flag, if you will. But other than that, they're the same thing. It's just a group of people, and then what they do with that as a group is up to them.
Oh, and to follow up, there was another question that asked, what's a benefit that you guys wish your organization had that they didn't?
Healthcare.
What's a benefit we wish we had?
Yeah, what's something that you think is missing that someone just needs to pay attention to? Like, oh, okay, they don't offer this thing, but it's something I need to pay attention to.
I think David's going to say screeners.
David was thinking that, but he wasn't going to say it out loud. Every negotiation, every new negotiation, we're striving to make things better and safer for our members. So, there's always a wish list of tweaks you'd like to make. We'd love, truthfully, that it was, 12-hour days, and there was 12-hour rest periods in between wrap and call the next day. We've made tremendous progress with that. Getting closer to it, but you can't have everything change all at once. So, there's always something you want to make better. You want, the cheapest, most comprehensive health plan for your members. So you strive towards that. You want, a pension plan with the highest possible payout in the long run for your members. You want, for their safety, like I said, the turnaround thing and it has been huge in our industry. for years, and it's something we're always pushing towards. But you know, to pinpoint one single thing, there isn't, but there's always room for improvement at every level, and it's something we always strive for.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Katie.
No, we are not able to offer our members healthcare because we are not a union, and there is a subtle difference, which is that because they can require their members to have contracts that pay into that health and pension plan, and we can't engage in contract negotiations on behalf of our members. You know, we're not able to make that requirement. We have come close to offering healthcare for our members through various negotiations, and every time we get close, sort of the laws change. So it's been a really frustrating process, and I think that's something that everybody in the guild has put a lot of effort into trying to do for our members, and I'm hopeful that we will find a way to offer that, but I think that may be a little bit optimistic on my part, and most of us get healthcare through the exchanges.
I was gonna respond to, I don't know if I could pinpoint one thing that I wish we could offer our members. SAG-AFTRA offers, you know, our members access to healthcare, access to their pension. I do think one thing that we are working on that I'm very excited is a bigger embrace of technology. You know, we can't be on every set, but we want performers to be able to communicate with us. You know, so SAG-AFTRA does have an app so that performers can, you know, reach out and let us know stuff that's happening on set without, you know, picking up their phone and holding and looking like they're calling, you know, the union. I'm really excited where SAG-AFTRA is going with technology to better serve each of our members across the country. Because there's so many productions and staff can't be on every single one of them. So that's kind of what I'm excited about and what I want the union to do more of.
Does that mean you and I aren't going out this set? I love the producer's face when the two of us show up at the same time.
Fantastic. I'm still going. Well, once all this settles down, I'm still going, but it's great. There's everyone on the call. You just won't understand the joy when you have the two unions show up at once. And you can't see, but Dave is very tall and I'm quite short. So it's really a like Laurel and Hardy kind of situation.
Well, we do have the routine down. But yeah, I mean, I do set visits, and Ryan does as well. We do them all the time, and it's as much to interact with our members on a face-to-face basis as it is. You know, it took a while to get producers to realize we weren't always showing up if there was an issue. You know, we'll always call first if there's a real issue, but when we show up, it's to engage our members. Because a lot of times, especially when you're working on shows, you know, by the time you think of the question you want to ask me, or say you want to ask Ryan, you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, and neither of us like answering our phones at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm pretty sure we both have, but you know, it's you think of it, it's like, oh, well, I'll call in the morning or I'll do whatever. So you don't think about it. So part of what we do as representing you is having that ability to show up and just pop by set and make sure, you know, generally there's no issues when we're showing up. Occasionally there are. Sometimes we show up for a little intimidation.
But it is as Dave said, it is more to have that human contact. You know, I'm not going to set, and the people there most likely aren't going to talk to me about the things that are happening. But you've now, you now have a face. Everyone, you know, on this chat, you're not thinking of SAG-AFTRA as like a big, you know, monolith organization. I'm working at SAG-AFTRA. I'm your SAG-AFTRA contact. So if you have a question, you want to go from there, you can call me. It's the same thing with working with everybody else on set. And the more you go, it kind of in a way demystifies the organization and makes it more personal in that way. When, you know, I was talking about later, we're all just working together on these closer relationships, and you can work through the problems that come up so much easier if you know the person. And I think that's more helpful for both our members and moving forward with other productions. I've made great relationships where, somebody might not be, they don't know where to go because we cover so many different things, but they'll always come to me because they know who I am, and I can get them what they want from that small little connection, in holding next to, a tray of ham.
This kind of goes back to our first question about conflict resolution on set a little bit, but they're all, it's about communication between all of the parties, and respecting each other's place. I do want to clarify, I'm not an employee of my organization. I'm a volunteer, which is a little bit different as a role. So we certainly, I have my own productions that I do. And we do have staff in New York and LA, but our staff will not show up on a set, usually.
Great. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time this afternoon to talk to the students and other members of our community. If there's any other questions, I think Katy offered to, if you don't mind sharing your, I was going to share your email address with my students. If anyone else needs that, we can coordinate that, reach out to either myself. Oh, Katy just shared it. So everyone has Katy's email if you would like to reach out to her. She has a ton of free time with 2 little kids at home. But she is happy to speak with you or if anything film related.
I just added mine, so you can use mine as well. One quick last piece of advice, and Ryan can chime in on his end of this, but yes, there are non-union productions out there, but the last thing you want is there to be miscommunication and I have to show up because you've got a majority union crew. My main job is to organize the unorganized. So if you're going to do a production, you're better off reaching out to the unions and at least giving us the heads up. You may have a budget that's so low, we do I call it the, live and be well. If you can get it done for that, God bless you. Good on you. But, hopefully there's that time where we are going to need to talk, and it's better to talk about putting a contract together before you get in production than on the second or third day, because then it's a disruption and it's something you didn't count on. It's something you didn't budget for. I always budget for the worst and be happy to get the best. But
Yeah, I think I want you all to use me as a resource for anything you're going to be moving forward with. Maybe you just need somebody's voice, but reach out and say, this is this thing I want to do. How can I do it? What would it cost? Like the IA, SAG-AFTRA has a variety of contracts for a variety of film lengths. We have short films for things, under 15 minutes, other stuff for under 45. I always talk about, maybe you're producing something in your backyard and your budget is literally like $100 and up high. Like that, we can work with it because the performers want to work. And I do kind of like the puzzle of you saying, this is what we have, what can we work out with? But I really would encourage you, because I do think production qualities do increase when you work with union talent. I just want good art out there. So that's the part I'll plug. So yeah, once you get to be bigger budget productions, everything will be there. The whole cast will be union. But now when you're starting, we can work a little bit. There's student film agreements. So yeah, we have a variety of little tools and playthings that I like to fit in. My little ramble there. But the one thing I'll plug too before I go is there is a really fantastic organization called the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and it's literally SAG-AFTRA Foundation .org. They have a great YouTube channel with conversations with filmmakers, conversations with artists. They actually even have celebrities read bedtime stories. But it is a really great resource for you to play with and explore to see what's on there. I'm always amazed when I go on to see the amount of material they have available just for free. So the SAG-AFTRA Foundation.
Actually, Sarah just put the link.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really wonderful. And students, thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. It was really a pleasure hosting this today. So thank you so much. And for all of my students, please stay on this WebEx meeting. Don't log out. I'm going to do one-on-one. But everyone else, please log out. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.